Raise your hand if you had a hard day in work today. I thought you did. Yes. Oh, yes. Please, just like when you go on an airplane, they say, turn off your mobile phones. So we say, you don't have to turn off your mobile phones, but put them on cow ringtone or turn them off. Peacock, cow, coil, or parrot ringtone. These are the only ones that are allowed. Either that or turn off your mobile phones. Your choice. Well, what will you do?
It's on and off.
Oh. Okay. Out of all of you who had a difficult time in the office today or at work today, how many of you think it was your boss's fault? Well, no one raised their hand, just in case that we're going to send the information to your boss, maybe. But, because Krishna is the ultimate boss. And this is something that it is important to understand. Of course, the most important thing to understand. Did you have a difficult today? A difficult day today? Or was it relatively easy? Yeah, who is your boss? Huh? Yes, that's true. That's true. Before I wanted to read what I will read, did you want to say a few words of welcome? No? Because what I'm going to read is something that I read at the retreat we just had at New Nandagram. But it's so important. And because this particular session that we're having, gathering we're having, some of the devotees had questions perhaps from our retreat, and generally we always have some question, some deep question in the core of our heart. So we'll have, we won't talk too much, but we'll have time for questions, and Krishna willing also answers. But I wanted to read something that is one of the key points, the key philosophical points of our sampradaya. It can be said practically it's one of the secrets of Krishna consciousness. It can also be said that that this is the definition of bhakti. There's a particular verse, the 8th verse in the 14th chapter of the 10th canto that many of you know. We're going to read that verse and read some of or all of the BBT commentary, and we might read some of the commentary of Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur about it. But this is one of the philosophical points that, sometimes we read and we think, oh, this is very important, I'm going to use this in my preaching. And we think that the points are meant externally. And of course they are meant for others. But this point is especially, I find, valuable for me as a fallen, conditioned soul wishing to rid himself of the shackles. What does shackles mean? Huh? Yeah. Okay. What's the actual, more or less literal meaning of shackles? Chains, exactly. Wishing for those wanting to remove some of the chains of my conditioned material bondage. Because that's what it's like being in the material world. Sometimes you see a little child, and there's a soul in there, there's life in there, there's innocence in there. but they're trapped in a material body. That's why it's so frustrating for a little child. They're trapped in a material body that they don't know how to operate properly yet. All they know how to do is cry, and the mother gradually learns to tell whether it's because they're hungry or because there's a pain over here or this or that. But they can only cry to express when they need something. They can't walk, they can't move. So similarly, the soul is trapped in a material body and by the modes of material nature, and we can't act as we would like to act, and it's so frustrating. So to remove this bondage, the chains, the shackles of material existence, Lord Brahma speaks many words, but here is one that Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur says defines bhakti. This, he says, is what bhakti is. Tate anukampam susamikshamano. That means that anukampa means mercy or compassion. Compassion. And samikshamano, he's sincerely hoping for Krishna's compassion. His consciousness is thinking of Krishna and sincerely hoping that Krishna is going to show some mercy to him. Because he's conscious of the awkward position he is in, being chained by the subtle body, by the gross body, by the modes of material nature, goodness, passion, ignorance, and forced to be executed. Yes. What do I mean by that? He's forced to be executed. What do I mean by that? Huh? Yeah. Chained in this way, forced. Next line. So the first line explains, he's earnestly, sincerely hoping for Krishna's compassion, Krishna's mercy upon him. Bunjana evatma kritam vapakam. And he's thinking, eva kritatma. The reaction, the situation he's in, the difficulties that he faces daily, yearly, moment to moment is eva kritatma. He has caused this himself by the reactions for things he has done in this life or in previous lives. He's hoping for Krishna's mercy, and he's seeing any difficulty he is facing as a reaction to something he's done, not pointing at everyone else's fault. And while he's doing this, these two things, who remembers the first two things in the first two lines? Who remembers one of them? Raise your hand. Yes? Okay, but English translation, please.
Compassion.
Yeah, but you didn't raise your hand, but you're allowed to not raise your hand because you're a teacher. Yes. So he's hoping for Krishna's compassion, and what's the other one? What is he?
Compassion.
Yes, he's hoping for Krishna's compassion, and at the same time, enduring means tolerating the difficulties that he goes through, seeing that it is a result of actions that he himself has done. and what's going on in his consciousness during this time when those two things are going on? Now, if I asked you right now, if you could remember those two things, raise your hand if you could remember those two things. Okay, the teacher isn't doing very well, is he? Not very many people can remember it. Okay, we'll have to go over it again because it's so important. He's earnestly, sincerely hoping, praying that Krishna will be merciful to him. And he's suffering. And he knows that his difficulties are not the fault of others, but they are due to him, due to actions that he himself has committed. So he deserves it, but yet he's hoping for mercy. He's willing to tolerate, but yet he is hoping for mercy. Krishna's kindness to release him from the bondage, the shackles, the chains. Now, if I asked you right now, if you remember these 2 points, raise your hand if you can remember it. These 2 points in some form or another. Yes. Okay. Okay, you just didn't want the teacher to feel so bad and have to repeat it all again. Okay, thank you. Now, keep this in mind. And while these two things are going on, hoping and tolerating, inside and outside, on 3 different levels. Rigva Vivapurbir Vadadana Namaste. Vadana Namaste means he's offering Namaste, his obeisances, with his heart, with his words, and with his body on all 3 levels. He's offering his obeisances to Krishna. Such a person, Jivata yo muktipade sadayabak. Such a person who thinks in this way, the result is that Dayabak, he inherits the kingdom of God. Actually, he's already living in the spiritual world because he's conscious of Krishna and serving Krishna and hoping for Krishna's mercy continuously. Jivatayo, just by his living, a person who is like this, just by his living, he will inherit the kingdom of God as naturally as the son inherits the property of the father. That's the rough translation. And it's interesting also in the Vedic culture, the girl children didn't inherit the property of the father, but they didn't have, because at the time of their marriage, they would give the girls a dowry, and it was not meant for the husband's family. It was meant for the girl, and this was her security. And this was the way the father expressed the love to his daughter, like that, by filling trunks and trunks and trunks of valuable goods, gold and jewelry and elephants. No, elephants weren't in the trunks. The elephants had trunks. That's different. Okay, here is the translation. My dear Lord, Lord Brahma says, one who earnestly waits for you to bestow your causeless mercy upon him, all the while patiently suffering the reactions of his past misdeeds, and offering you respectful obeisances with his heart, words, and body, such a person is surely eligible for liberation, for it has become his rightful claim. And the commentaries of the Acharyas also say that not just liberation or freedom such a person gets, he gets Krishna. And liberation automatically follows, automatically follows if you get Krishna. And getting Krishna means getting Krishna's service. Getting to serve Krishna is the greatest thing that can occur. Now, are there any questions at this point? Yes. Trini, you can answer.
The course's mercy that Brahma is asking or stating, is that what you just said then? Is against Krishna, or
is it?
What is that course's mercy that Brahma is talking about?
Did you want to?
I think you should answer from the text, because that's a question in relationship to the text.
Oh, I should answer because it's from the text.
Because you have the text in front.
Yes, okay. He doesn't, not begging for the difficulties to be removed, although no one likes difficulties, but he accepts them. But what he wants is to be fixed always in Krishna's service, and always remember Krishna. One example of this is it's such a wonderful pastime, actually. I could tell it in a very, very long way or a very, very short way, and I think it's best I tell it in a short way. That when there were some kings who had been incarcerated, which means kidnapped and locked up by Jarasandha. When Krishna arranged for the killing of Jarasandha, and he freed them, he arranged for the killing through Bhima, and then he freed the kings. They offered some prayers to Krishna, and in those prayers, all they asked for from Krishna was the ability to remember him, which means devotional service. So if one can remember Krishna, if one is actually deeply engaged in devotional service, as we had said previously, then automatically liberation follows. There's no question of requiring liberation or freedom from suffering if one is actually engaged in Krishna's service. So if one has the capacity to always remember Krishna, then practically speaking, he's not in the material world. He's in Krishna consciousness. Remembering Krishna, but not in the mood of King Kamsa, who was pratikulena. Because Kamsa was so fixed in remembering Krishna, but his mood was just the opposite. Does anyone know why Kamsa was always remembering Krishna? What emotion was he experiencing? Fear. Yes, exactly. So many scholarly individuals are here. He was fearful. And it's actually, and this is described in the 7th canto, 1st chapter, this maya or fear or envy, like who is the example of envy? Shishupal. And these negative emotions fix Krishna so deeply in the mind, or fix whoever we're feeling, if we're angry at someone or afraid of someone, they're always visiting our mind. So it's ironical that you want to get them out of your mind, and they're always visiting your mind because of your emotion. So Sukadev makes this point in the 7th canto to show the power of Krishna Smaranam, remembering Krishna. So if we can actually remember Krishna, we are free automatically. So devotional service. But very good question, born of careful hearing. Thank you.
So is that the causeless mercy?
Well, that is the causeless mercy, the ability to always remember Krishna and to chant his glories and to be engaged in his service. That is causeless mercy, because we call it causeless because we cannot do it on our own, and we cannot force Krishna to give it to us. But we can act in such a way, and this is what's describing our part in the relationship. We should act in such a way that Krishna is inclined to give us his causeless mercy, but we cannot force it. Is that all right? Okay, thank you. Any other questions?
Even to understand this, one has to have some level of advancement. Any ordinary person in the material world cannot really think when he's in trouble, they think that, oh, why is the Lord, they start blaming the Lord. But unless one is fixed in that level of advancement, then they can understand that this is due to my past deeds, I'm getting all these reactions. Still he does devotional service with more vigor than thinking that this is my past deeds which has caused, and that's the way he becomes rightful claim of getting that.
So that's a statement or a question?
I'm asking,
Are you asking whether or not?
yeah, somebody has to come to that level to understand that this is because I have done something wrong in the past, that's why I'm getting these reactions. So even to understand that one should be a devotee and understand how.
Are you asking how can one come to that level that one?
Yeah, I can.
It's true that devotees have to come to a certain level to be able to understand that, but there are also sometimes religious people in any tradition that have some understanding that that I have done something and therefore something is coming as a result of that. But it seems as though you have to have a certain sense of a loving relationship with Krishna to be able to feel that I have caused this without feeling self-hatred, and to feel that I can hope for his mercy and there's a very good chance it will come. Not that I can hope for his mercy, but probably it won't come. So one has to have a certain degree of development of relationship, sense of relationship with the Lord, and that comes, as we know, to some degree through our hearing and seeing other people's examples, but it comes mainly through our own efforts. Even if we don't always do things perfectly, but the fact that we're endeavoring, just like we're hearing here, that just by being alive you can inherit your father's property. Of course, I was thinking when this was said that if I'm a very bad son and I'm disobedient and cruel like King Venu, then I may not inherit my father's property. He may make some arrangement to avoid me. But if I'm endeavoring to be a good son, then just by my continuing to do that, it's becoming gradually my right. So our effort has to be there as well, and Krishna sees that, and even if that effort is not completely perfect, there may be some kind of misunderstandings in our attempt, but Krishna sees that we want to receive his kindness, willing to tolerate, but hoping for mercy. And I think that can be experienced sometimes even by somebody who's a very young and perhaps even immature practitioner, but maybe not all the time.
also, let's say if someone just hears this point, oh, this is how I'm supposed to deal with difficulties and suffering. And then when we hear this, and he has a simple type of faith, and then when a difficulty comes, then he tries to do it. Oh, and then when he's unable to do it, he has to pray even more deeply. So this is by accepting the instructions of Shastra as something that we should do and taking it very seriously. It will force us to become deeper and even advanced. Another very good question and comment and very nice answer. Thank you. Any other questions or comments?
I
Yes.
was just wondering, sometimes these prayers come because we're in these tribulations, and they agitate the intelligence to seek for an alternative, a positive alternative. But how do we keep a steady intelligence going in the good times?
I wouldn't know anything about the good times. You'll have to ask someone else that question. But no, I'm serious. Yeah, I understood. If I understood your question correctly, you're saying that if someone is in distress, they turn to Krishna. Naturally, they're forced to by the circumstances. But when they're not in distress, that same pressure to turn to Krishna may not be there. So your question is how to constantly, consistently, and steadily turn to Krishna. Is that correct? Yes. Well, one thing is that the very nature of the material world is that we don't have steady circumstances that are free from tribulation and difficulty, especially in Kali Yuga. See, here's like one of them. You have a wonderful microphone, and then it doesn't even work. Can't even figure out how to turn it on. It just happens. Distress and tribulation just happens. We try to enjoy, we try to make things steady and good, but it is working. It doesn't sound like it's working, but we can always pass this back and forth. Take this out of it. Oh! Now we don't know what's going to happen.
Thank you.
And the other side is that we should thank Krishna for any good that occurs to us. Thinking, actually, I don't deserve this. Because I know better than anyone else knows. Because people criticize me. But they don't know really how bad it is, actually. I know more about the reasons that I should be criticized more than they know. So when something good happens, the devotee sees that as undeserved. That's the other side. That this is Krishna's kindness. Like this happened with Sudama Brahmana. When he walked back to Porbanda? Porbanda. His place. That's very interesting. One question that can be asked is why Krishna didn't send Sudama Brahmana in a chariot. Why did he make him walk all the way back from Dwarka? And the answer to that is that Krishna wanted his land, his kingdom, to be purified by the dust of Sudama's lotus feet. But then when Sudama got there to his place, he saw that previously where just a shack occurred, there was such an opulent, beautiful, jewel-laden palace. And his wife had been transformed, and then he was transformed into beauty. And he just thought, this must be the work of my dear friend Krishna. There is no other explanation. So he was, before that he was thinking, Krishna, I didn't ask Krishna for anything, but he saw my poverty and he didn't give me anything because he knows that I'm not qualified to have anything, because I would just use it for sense gratification. And actually it said that he had an aversion to matter. Well, actually he should have a neutrality towards it. Nirbandha Krishna sambandha yukta varagi uchate. He should be neutral and see everything as Krishna's service, and he had an aversion. So as he was thinking that Krishna so kindly didn't give me anything, when he saw what Krishna did give him, he saw that he should use it in Krishna's service. And in this way, he remained steadily equipoised in both difficulty and in happiness. He just saw Krishna in everything. For one who sees me everywhere, who knows the Sanskrit? Sulabha parta, and become very easy to obtain if we see Krishna in this. Did you want to add anything? Is that all right? Thank you, Prabhu. Any other questions? Yes.
Prabhu, you mentioned the translation. The translation is there where the devotee goes through this suffering, considering that as his reactions of his past deeds, but in the beginning of devotional life, at least for me, it's very natural to blame others for our suffering.
So that's what Mataji was saying. Both were saying that. Yeah, it's natural but incorrect. So what to do if there's something natural? It's natural, but it's. Then why is it if it's someone else's fault? Then why is it only happening to you? It's happening specifically to you and no one else, perhaps, or so you have something to do with it, yes? So we should take responsibility for our part. Now, your point is that it's difficult to do that because there's a tendency to point fingers and point blame. Yeah, and then you try to convince everyone else that it's that person's fault, and that's called politics. And then we get so entangled in these things. On the other hand, we have to act practically, not foolishly. I interrupted your question, actually. What were you going to ask specifically?
Yeah, no, that was the question of how to
correct the thinking, our thinking.
Yeah.
If we have because there's such a tendency for the mind to do this, I have found, that we should be very aware of this point. And when we notice we are doing that, we become conscious of the fact that we are doing this, then we should pray to Krishna to help us. Because it just entangles us in further bad reactions. And we suffer so much. Because then, when we become entangled, then we want to point the finger at the other person, and we keep anger in our heart towards the person, or even envy or hatred, and then we have to walk around with that in our heart. Now, how do you chant Hare Krishna in a peaceful state of mind when you're angry and hating so many people? One thing that we can do, if we tend to do that, is we should pray for that person, that may good occur to him. Did you want to comment on that?
Yeah, I was just thinking that we can give so many statements and so many principles and so much advice, but in each case, with each devotee and ourselves also, there's very specific situation, and it's often a little bit more complex. It's not sort of clear. There's a bit of this and a bit of that, and perhaps the other person is doing something wrong, perhaps they are making a mistake, and so forth. So then I was thinking as you were speaking, what would I say to somebody in that situation that goes beyond just giving you a few key points that may not stick? And then I remembered one time when I was living in Vrindavan, and there was some Mataji, and somehow or other my mind connected in a rivalry with her. Something she could do and I wanted to do it, whatever. And it was embarrassingly petty, but it had a life of its own, and it went on for months and months actually. And when I would see her, immediately it would start. And so then I would think, oh, I don't want to see her. And then when I didn't see her, I thought about her all the time. She said this, and that's why I can't do this. And it really had a life of its own. And
did you feel happy while it was going on?
No, that's what I was going to say. The first thing was I felt miserable. And so I tried to sort of shed it. And sometimes I'd go to people and tell them, I don't want to really say bad about her, but there was this situation.
But did you hear?
And she did this, and I felt like this, and so and then it would increase, because I wasn't able to actually get to the core of it. And it went on, and then I remember Lord Nityananda's appearance day came, and I made special prayers. Please just stop this. It's like a disease, a mental disease or a torment. This, and then it eased a little bit, and it was still there. And one day I was so disturbed by it, and I often would read the Bhagavatam just to get some peace of mind. And I was reading, quite specifically, I remember I was reading the pastime of the coronation of Prithu Maharaj. And there in the purport, and I was not reading systematically, I was just really reading to just get some release or get this away. And I was going down, reading, and then there was one sentence that Srila Prabhupada explained, that we are all parts of Krishna. And somehow or other that really shocked me in a good way, to think that, my gosh, I'm a part of Krishna. And then she's a part of Krishna. And I'm carrying on this kind of never-ending mental battle with a part of Krishna. It's not like she's just somebody and I'm somebody, but we're actually part of Krishna. And somehow just at that point, it broke. Something snapped, and I suddenly was able to start the repair work that was needed in that situation. So I think that there's a lot of praying for mercy, hoping for mercy, but it didn't seem to be coming. And part of the reason why it didn't seem to be coming was because of the force of my ill will that I couldn't release myself from. So you have to keep praying, and you have to keep hoping, and you have to recognize that this is very painful to me, and really actually, as we're saying, willing to tolerate it somehow. You haven't got any choice. And it's unbearable because you just keep sort of going over and over it, but just hoping that somehow Krishna will show you somewhere something, a clue that can sort of break you out of it. Because it's almost like a trance or something. You need something to shake you to get it to shift. So it's not exactly in the formula. It's in the attempt and the wish to improve and the recognition that this is causing me so much pain. Because if I'm part of Krishna and you're part of Krishna, then Krishna's not happy. So that was one thought that came to my mind as you were asking that question.
And another sort of aspect of this, of an answer to your question, is that we see, say we get hit by a stick. So blaming the person is like blaming the stick. But we want to see that the ultimate holder of the stick is Krishna. He's the one that's the Anumanta, Upadrasta Anumanta Cha Bhatta Bhokta Maheshwara. He's the permitter. He's allowed it to happen. So, in dealing with the stick itself, we sometimes have to be practical and to make sure that, because the person may not have the same motives as Krishna. So we have to be practical, and we certainly can recognize that there could be enmity on somebody's part, or some politics, or some bad feelings on another person's part. But this is dealing with the experience of the suffering of having something done to you, or experiencing some suffering. And you can't escape the suffering that you do. So it will happen in another form, and another form, until you learn how to deal with it. Until basically you learn the lesson that the wielder of the stick, Krishna, wants you to learn. And in the purport here, the BBT purport, it says, the purpose of the entire creation of God is to rectify the living entity's tendency to enjoy without the Lord. And therefore the particular punishment given for a sinful activity is specifically designed to curtail the mentality that produced the activity. So Krishna wants something inside to change. Even though there may be some fault on the part of the person who's acting. But Krishna is the ultimate one behind it. And there's something he wants us to do. Out of his affection for us, to move forward, to move closer to him. Just another aspect of all the different points that are made. So it's not easy to do these things. It's not easy. And then we can point to Krishna. Oh, he's the one wielding the stick. So so we can get angry at Krishna. So there is a point when we have to grow up and see that this is, accept the fact that it is me. That I've done something wrong, and therefore this suffering is coming to me. It's coming in one form or another form, and if it's not going to come through this person and this stick, it will come from another person and another stick. So I better understand that it's due, and then when you accept it, then immediately half the pain is gone. And another aspect still is that, very close to what Mataji was saying, is that we see that if there's someone acting that we think is improperly, it's their conditioned nature. It has nothing to do with them at all. What do you think about that?
That's very hard.
Too deep.
Huh?
Too deep.
Very hard.
Sorry.
Well, it's not that. It's how about that, I said it's too deep.
But what do you do? Now the question takes a different turn. What do you do when you're asked to do something that's difficult? Or we say this, I'm not that advanced. But you're asked actually to do it for your own good, for your own advancement. Then what do you do?
Do, action.
So what are you saying it's too deep?
No, not just that. It is not the soul which is participating, but it is the mind of the person is participating.
The condition, it says conditioning. But that will stop you, just as Mataji said, that will stop you from being, hating the person. There's a saying in English, you hate
You hate the sin, not the sinner.
Yes, so the sinner happens to be an eternal soul, a part of Krishna, and Krishna is not pleased with that. That's such a nice point, that if one brother hates another brother and wishes them ill, is the Father pleased?
One thing I would say was that to do that, to actually come to that point of even trying to see another person's misbehavior or aggressive behavior as being not them, the soul, but their conditioning, you need to be able to feel that you are protected by Krishna from that situation, even if you had somehow or other had some implication in causing it.
Sure, but I'm trying to make the point that you may have to act practically, too. But you don't want to allow your mind to get into deep enmity with someone.
Yeah.
That's the point, because then you're very much entangled. And as you said, you kept on thinking about them.
All the time.
Yeah,
Everywhere.
so the exact opposite to what you want.
Yeah.
Happens. That's the point. Of course, it's a little philosophical. Any other questions? Yes, Mahatmaji.
One verse is coming to my mind, so I want to know whether it's closer to what we discussed. Punnati Janani Shanam Raya Murare Raya Murare. Because we are going to different wombs again and again in different bodies. So we are asking mercy from Lord Krishna. Please save me from this. Is it closer to what we are discussing today?
Not on this exact point, but yeah. Yes, a praying to Krishna to help with difficult situations. When we're confronted with a situation that's beyond our capacity, we want to take shelter of Krishna. I mean, that's what we want to do, yes?
That's also the only way that you grow. It's like when you have a child, if they sit down and don't actually try and stand up, and when they stand up they fall over and they go through difficulty, they don't grow. So if you want to see Krishna's protection, there has to be danger. Or if you want to see anything, if you want to become more advanced, you have to face a situation that you're not able to face. And then recognize that, oh, I've grown a bit because I actually could deal with that conditioning and I couldn't deal with that conditioning prior. So Krishna sometimes hears a situation, what are you going to do? Do your best.
And Krishna forces us to depend on him. Very hard for a conditioned soul. There's no other Sharanagati. This is our process. When I was young, just growing up, there used to be one television program called Superman. And Superman had this one of the wonderful things he did is that he could take a piece of coal and with his great strength he would press it and put it under so much pressure, and then when he would open his hand, it was a diamond. So without pressure, the coal of our heart doesn't turn into the diamond valuable diamond of Krishna consciousness. So the pressure must be there. So pressure only occurs when there is deep sincerity and a deep attempt to do something that's somewhat beyond your capacity. Then the pressure occurs. If you just say, anyway, then there's no pressure. So we escape the pressure, but we also escape, and we're left with coal. Yes. So the prayer is very important in this. We pray because we realize that this is beyond my capacity. We say nice prayers like that. Yes, Prabhu.
So how in this situation we actually decide between like what is reasonable and safe for us and the pleasure? Because like our mind might tell us that too much pressure will actually break you down, and you shouldn't, expose yourself to that pressure. So how we balance that?
Did you want to?
That's a good question.
Yeah.
I'd like to hear from you first.
Well, first of all, Mataji said, very good question. I agree. The ability to take, first of all, we have to know what is ideal. So this is ideal. If we don't know what the ideal is, then when we go to practice, we may do the exact wrong thing that doesn't bring us in the right direction. But yet the ideal has to be practical. We have to act upon it in this world. And the ability to take the theoretically ideal and apply it practically in this world is called vigyan, or it's called wisdom. So, how do you know without being wise? How to balance the ideal and the practical. If we are only ideal, try to be the ideal, we will be a fanatic. And if we're only practical, we'll go in the wrong direction all the time. So it's always a delicate balance that has to be done. So when dealing with these issues, if we don't quite have the wisdom, or even if we do, we should consult with those who are wiser than us. Either consult or confirm. Because these kind of issues, when they're happening to us, we feel like we're all alone and no one else has ever seen this type of a problem before, etc., etc., etc. But realistically, everyone goes through problems, and there are a lot of devotees who have come through the other side of of the particular difficulty they were going through. The seniors, the wise elders, and more experience. So it's very good to have trusted friends to either consult with to find out what to do, or to have confirmed, this is my conclusion. So I'm not sure that exactly answers what you're specifically thinking, but that's a general guideline about it. And did you want to?
Yeah, I was just thinking that one of the tricks of the mind is to isolate us. Just as Prabhuji was saying, where you think, no one will be able to understand this, so I'm going to have to work this out myself. And then another trick of the mind is to seek to act in passion when one's really disturbed. This is the time I should work this out. And both of these are to be avoided as much as possible. Because sometimes when you talk to somebody and you tell them, this is a bit embarrassing, but this is this such and such, or this is quite a serious thing, and then you select your person who you're going to speak to carefully, but this is the situation, do you have any thoughts on this? They can say things, and sometimes you get a recognition that perhaps Krishna is speaking through them, or as we were saying, they can confirm something that you're thinking might be the next thing that should be done in a particular situation. But the tendency is towards one of the other. no one can understand, I've got nobody to help me with this, or I'm going to just sort this all out right now, I've had enough, I'm going to fix this, show them. And both of those are to be avoided. Come closer to the middle.
And another point in this regard, or possibly two, is that this is an issue of balance. And when you're talking about balance, you have to be conscious. So you try doing it a little this way, and you might not get it exactly right. And then you feel, oh, this is too much, the pressure's too much, so then you just move a little bit this way. And you're trying to avoid extremes and shifts. So you try to get it right as best you can, and then you watch and see if there's too much pressure, you let off a little bit of pressure. And if you see, oh, well, there's no pressure and what I wanted to happen isn't happening at all, then you put the pressure up a little bit. And the second point is, we cannot go wrong by strengthening our sadhana, by chanting good rounds, by associating with devotees, by studying the Bhagavatam, by faithfully taking shelter of the deities, and by living or visiting a holy place, or making where we're living into a more holy place. So these things will always strengthen our wisdom. And also going through life, what can we do? We have to, sometimes sometimes as we go through life, we'll be too much on this side, and sometimes we'll go and be too much on that side, and we get experience as we go through life. Did you want to add any more or ask any more, or is that all?
No. Thank you. Yeah, there were several very good points about the isolation and about
taking off wildly in the name of solution.
Yeah, from now on, I'm always going to. And so we just, and someone older often can put what we're going through in perspective of a whole life of Krishna consciousness. And that's so fortunate in this community. There are so many older devotees and senior devotees. And ultimately, Krishna is there. So we should be deep and prayerful too. Okay, yes.
In contrast with this definition of bhakti, we also have the Jnana-Vilashita Shunyam definition, as well as the other one by Prabhupada.
Yes.
There, the definition is more focused on not having any expectations and rather being engaged in service. So, how in contrast with these three statements?
That's not a cowering tone. Oh, sorry. No, I'm also sorry, because that's just a standing joke. But actually, I don't use a cow. I use a quail. It's so nice. Anyone want to call me? I have it with me. It's so nice. And Mataji has a cowering tone. So if in the middle of the class you hear sorry. Okay. I accept correction. Back to what the question
Can I say something here? That Srila Prabhupada explains in various places that this is the mood of a devotee. That it's exactly opposite to the mood of an ordinary person. And that's why it's so hard for us to stay in this mood. But the mood is that if something difficult happens to me, I deserve it. I deserve actually a lot more than this because of all the things that I've done in my life. And this is not the mood of somebody who's neurotic, who's always feeling sorry for themselves or depressed. But it's an accurate assessment And if I say, well, I've led a good pious life, I'm a punyavadi, then we can say, well, maybe in countless lifetimes, why are you still here? You must have done something. And Krishna is somehow or another, he's minimizing the amount of distress. And so one sees Krishna's mercy right there, expecting the mercy. You see it, you look for the mercy and you can see it right there. And then the same devotional mood, which was what Srila Prabhupada showed in his own example, is that when so many wonderful things come, the ordinary person thinks, of course, I deserve it. And when the bad things come, they think, I don't deserve it. Whereas the devotee thinks, I deserve it. And then when the good things come, he thinks, I don't deserve it. And this is somehow or other Krishna's extreme mercy and kindness that he's giving me these things. And Prabhupada said, and so therefore he remains always equipoised in both situations. So we hear about this, and it's not that we're supposed to hear about it and it's just how some people think, and maybe one day in the future, since I've only been chanting for 1 year or 2 years or 5 years or 10 years, it's not there yet and it will just come one day. But we have to think on these things, meditate on this difference of mood, and notice introspectively how we don't have it. Or if we do have it, we'll already be doing it, so we won't have any difficulty. But if we have difficulty, then I'm not in the right mood. And then, of course, the spirit, the definition of pure devotional service, that is automatically not in any way in contradiction to this particular mood.
And also, practically speaking, say if you're performing, say if you understand, and you understand that, so you decide to perform devotional service in a mood of just wanting to please Krishna. And then something difficult happens to you. So how to deal with that difficult aspect on the path of pure devotional service, this is what this is describing. So I remembered one word that came up while you were speaking. You used the word expectation. So what is to expect the mercy of Krishna, or hope for the mercy of Krishna, that is not against pure devotional service. The devotee lives in the mercy of Krishna. He's always thinking, when will Krishna be merciful to me? That type of a hope, it's natural for a devotee. His relationship to Krishna is natural, so it's not against pure devotional service, that type of an expectation, any more than you say, I'm desireless, and then someone says, I don't desire anything, and you say, well, the person says to you, well, you want to breathe or you don't want to breathe? So you do want to breathe, so then you're not desireless. So it's just so natural. So just like breathing is natural to stay alive, for a devotee, his life is naturally dependent on Krishna and wanting to serve Krishna. Well, you desire to serve Krishna, you desire something. No, that's natural. We don't want anything unnatural for the soul to be dependent. Even there's so many prayers with the gopis and Srimati Radharani. When will Krishna be merciful to us? And show us his beautiful lotus-like face. That's all in the realm of spiritual and natural. So we should desire things and we should hope for things, but they should be all proper things, spiritual things, not jnana karma anavrita. This is different. Is that okay? As Prabhupada said, as soon as we don't have something to desire, we won't be alive. We have to, our desire we want our spiritual desires to increase. Yes.
One is in the retreat, you were saying that we should try for this mentality even on a daily basis, not not even when we are faced with a situation like Mataji was explaining, with one of the 40s. Can you talk a little bit more about that? About how we should try to cultivate this mentality, even on a daily basis, when it doesn't seem that things...
When you don't have a difficulty.
Or even a situation like Mataji was explaining, like if you're grudge against someone, or that's... Could you explain a little bit more?
Well, it seems to depend on Krishna, to chant Krishna's names constantly, which is the advice of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, Kirtani Asadahari. There's a requirement to do that. And that requirement is Trinada Visanitena. You have to be humble. So if one is actually humble, then one will depend on Krishna and know that his situation is always somewhat precarious. But usually we're not humble. We think, well, I'm capable of doing this, and I'll just wait till taking care of this and taking care of that. But actually, in fact, we're completely dependent on Krishna. So an acknowledgement of our dependence on Krishna constantly is a prerequisite for thinking like this and chanting constantly and praying like this constantly. A feeling of dependence on Krishna constantly. But just as Mataji said right in the very beginning, this is advanced stuff. But if we do it, we become advanced. And Krishna is so kind that if we have pride, he'll engage it for a while, if we think ourselves very competent. But gradually, just by going through life, Krishna removes our pride. This is what Prabhupada even said this. He said, an old man cannot be proud. So it's just becoming humble or humiliated is unfortunately part of what it means for a conditioned soul to advance. So we could circumvent it by becoming humble right in the beginning and depending on Krishna. Just like Prabhupada, he gave, I won't use that example, but like a baby, a small child is naturally dependent on the parents, and for everything they ask their parents. So, and then when we grow up, we pride ourselves, we don't have to ask anymore. But the devotee never grows up in that sense. He grows deep, but he doesn't grow beyond depending on Krishna. In fact, his dependence on Krishna simply increases. So in that sense, Kunti Devi prayed, Janma Aishwarya Shruti Shri Bir Edamana Manapama. These things, good birth, the things that we take shelter of, that we're proud of, Aishwarya, our wealth, Shruti, Shrivya, our learning, and our beauty, these things are the greatest enemies of our advancement if we think they're ours as opposed to gifts from Krishna to use in his service. But time tends to teach a devotee these things. And all the things that we're proud of, time steals away. Think for a second what you're expert at. I once took this test, this like intellectual test recently, and I got like in the I put myself in the it's by age, so it was like 65 to 70-year-olds, and I was like 90% or something like that. And then I just switched the little button on the computer and went to 20 and 25 years old, the same score, and I was 20%. But the computer must have made a mistake. Anyway, it was a stupid computer, and it was a stupid test anyway. And anyway, 20 and 25-year-olds, they all just have mobile phones. So that was very humbling, actually. You might be able to recognize it right now, but it was very humbling because life humbles one. Yes, Prabhu.
I was just thinking, like the situation of a child within the womb. He has that situation where he's in that curious position, he's praying to the Lord with his body, mind, and soul. And then when he gets out, it's all forgotten, and he's surrounded by his relatives and his...
He'll go, goo, 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 goo. And he'll make funny faces at him.
They're all giving her, everything she wants, and she becomes forgetful. But it brings to mind the association, the power of association.
Wait.
In these good times, we can still be reminded that we're not the body, and we don't fall into a passionate mode of sense of
I missed one part. I'm sorry, because I got distracted.
Reminiscing that reflecting that by having the good association around us, then we're not becoming intoxicated by that good times. So we don't fall down to mode of passion and ignorance. We still can become elevated by that good association.
Yeah. It's interesting that Jiva Goswami asks a very interesting question on that. If the child in the womb is praying, Sri Gauratai, Sri Radha Ballabha, Jagannath Baldev, Subhadra Devi Ki Jai. Srila Prabhupada. I'll just answer this and then we'll end. Then if he's praying so sincerely, why does Krishna let him forget? And he gives the answer that the souls that actually pray like that, they don't forget. But it's not every soul. Okay. Thank you very much.